Okay, when you're ready to turn it on. If you hit record, are you recording too?
Not yet.
Oh, okay.
I'll give it till 6:30. Okay, it's 6:30. We'll call a meeting to order. We'll start off with roll call. Excuse me. Councilperson Holhouse. Here. Councilperson Bendel. Here. Councilperson Vasky.
Here.
Councilperson Huber. Here. And Councilperson Johnson.
Here.
I would say the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there anybody who has public input tonight?
Make the motion to approve consent agenda.
Do we need to strike that?
We need to strike, we can't approve the agenda. So for the 6/11 agenda, we need to strike the public hearing on budget amendment number 2.
So motion to approve with that removed.
Okay.
With item, removed. You want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda with updating the regular council meeting agenda to strike the public hearing on budget amendment number 2 fiscal year 25. And can I add setting the date?
Yeah, so that would be the resolution 128 to set the date. Which was sent in the email. So we'll add
Okay,
it.
so
to
we'll
the
add
agenda.
resolution, okay.
So you can add,
Who seconded that?
Nobody yet.
nobody,
So I'm adding
so
resolution.
you can consider resolution
28.
2025 128, which is resolution to set the date. And then when we get to that on the agenda, we'll set the date.
Second that motion.
Okay. It's been moved and second to approve the consent agenda, striking item A, public hearing, and then also adding hearing date set on resolution 2025-128. We'll vote. Also, Councilperson Huber.
Yes.
Councilperson Johnson.
Yes.
Councilperson Holhouse.
Yes.
Councilperson Bendel.
Yes.
Councilperson Vasky.
Yes.
And we have no staff reports.
So we had staff reports for Public Works, Benton County, all of these were written, City Administrator, the library update, no update for parks, and a city engineer update. Were there any updates that you guys, or questions that you had?
Does he want to give him that?
Did you want to give anything in addition to the written?
Yeah, I can just say, in addition to the written report, come and check out the library when you get a chance. We rearranged things. We got some newer, more library appropriate furniture. So, and summer reading programs really awesome, great stuff.
You've had some great programs down there too.
Yeah. Check it out.
I would also like to just commend the library and Director Carrie Burkhart for an unprecedented really amount of people that registered, at 290 participants that had registered for the summer reading program. between teenage people, youth, adult, as well as young children. That's more than the school district gets into a summer program. So I want to commend you guys, like that's really
Yeah,
amazing.
she's doing an awesome job.
One thing I would just like to point out in the Public Works update, just again, that one of the things that Trent had added was the update to the access road that will be starting here soon for the water storage tank. Just to let you know, we had a meeting about that. Remember that particular access road and the work that's going to be done there was not SRF approved funding. So we already have where we would take that out of budget, but Trent just wanted me to reiterate that so that you guys, if you didn't have time to read through it, that the access road would start here soon. So,
That's one that goes by Winds Reach.
Right.
what's that?
That's one that goes by Winds Reach.
Yep. And I think that John is here. John, did you have anything you were going to add to your report? I think that's it. The other items that I put in my report, I'll probably also address in the meeting tonight, so.
Okay. We're on to old business. Consider resolution 2025-107, Benton County Sheriff's Office Mental Health Liaison. Now, is that something we've done before with the police department, then correct?
Yes, so this was previously on the agenda, and in the email that I sent to you, I received email back from the chief deputy at Benton County. Because they are previous 28E agreements, this would be both for the mental health liaison as well as dispatch fees. They still require, the state really still requires that the 28E agreements be on file at Benton County, and that these would not become active unless the police department becomes active during this fiscal year. And at that time, then those would be retroactive to the future quarter, so that we would not accrue expenses. For example, in January, we would not have to go back to the beginning of the fiscal year to pay for any that were not previously included until it became active. But they are 2080 agreements, so they do need to still be on file. And we previously tabled them. So I told them that I would bring them back to council.
I'll motion to approve 2025-107.
I'll second.
Been moved and second to consider approve resolution 2025-107. Bill vote. Councilperson Johnson.
Yes.
Councilperson Holthouse.
Yes.
Councilperson Huber.
Yes.
And Councilperson Vasky.
Yes.
Councilperson Bendel.
Yes.
Item B, consider resolution 2025-121, Benton County Sheriff's Office 28E agreement dispatch fees, and that goes along with what Jennifer just said.
Correct. So again, same thing. We are only charged the dispatch fees when we have an active department. But it is already an existing 2080 agreement. So in the future, if it were to become active, the agreement needs to be on file for July fiscal year 2026.
I make a motion to consider resolution 2025, to approve 2025-121 Benton County Sheriff's Office 28E agreement for dispatch fees.
Second.
We got 2 seconds on it. I'll go with Councilperson Hubers. We'll vote on considering or approving resolution 2025-121. Councilperson Holthouse.
Yes.
Councilperson Bendel.
Yes.
Councilperson Johnson.
Yes.
Councilperson Huber. And Councilperson Vasky.
Yes.
New business, item A, consider resolution 2025-125 to file plans, specification, form of contract, and opinion from the construction cost, set a date, time and date for public hearing, and set a time and date for receive bids on for construction of Bing Miller Lane overlay project. Now this this project there, you just gotta pave right over the seal coating that's there.
There's a little bit of milling at the ends to tie in with the concrete street up at the highway. But yeah, it's, really the focus of this project is just to, kind of establish uniformity on the road. When you get out, you can't tell, but, there's some irregularities in that road. And hope with this overlay, not only, add strength, obviously, so Trent doesn't have to keep seal coating it. But, put a nice uniform crown on that thing, slick it off, and kind of set it up for future improvements, mill and overlay, additional overlay, 15, 20 years down the road. It should go pretty quick.
And this will be to set the public hearing then for Wednesday, July 9th at 6:30 for Big Miller Lane. And those items will be on file at the clerk's office for that.
Just remember, I won't be here July 9th.
I will motion to approve resolution 2025-125 to file the plan specifications for a contract and opinion of probable construction costs. Set the time and date for July 9th, 2025 at 6:30 for the public hearing. And the date and time to receive bids by Thursday, July 3rd at 4 a.m. at City Hall.
Second. Been moved and second to approve resolution 2025-125. Good vote. Councilperson Huber.
Yes.
Councilperson Vasky.
Yes.
Councilperson Johnson.
Yes.
Councilperson Holthouse.
Yes.
Councilperson Bendel.
Yes.
Item B, consider resolution 2025-120 to approve budget transfers number 4 for fiscal year 2025.
Well, I would propose we can go through the memo, but this is what has been striked through for tonight. But the memo is to go through the amendment for number 2, which setting the public hearing for June 20, or whatever in June here for a special meeting. But so the public safety budget will go over, as well as, which again, the public safety includes police, fire, ambulance, building inspection, animal control, and that expense will go over budget. And then emergency in that category will go over, because as you know, this year we budgeted for the regular maintenance for the sirens, which is, I believe, $8,500, I think that we budgeted for. And then we did decide to go in on the software upgrade with the city of Urbana, Atkins,
Yeah, I think
And
that's
Bell
probably
or
Shelter.
Shelburne.
I don't know if Bell Plain would have the, because then I'll tie in with Dwayne.
Yeah, so all 3 of us went in. Our portion was $7,200, so obviously that was not an expense that was planned at the approval of the fiscal year budget in April of 2024. Capital projects, so if you remember here, previously we did go through and do the line item transfers for the track loader, which would have been for the dollar amount that came from RUT, which also then included the expenses, I think it was $7,400 out of that equipment account that we closed. So those were actually, I went ahead and transferred those into the capital vehicle account so that it stays on record as a capital vehicle and not just in RUT. Because we did that, the capital budget initially was not, did not have those expenses, so that will put us at $66,000, which of course, That is rounded up just a little bit in case we were to have a capital expense with that, which hopefully we would not. But we have that there, plus also, under that same capital projects, we still have a little over $3,000 for the Laird's addition. So every time a property is sold in that addition, we do reimburse them. I think it's $750 per property, so that would be the additional dollars to that. I think that's. So I think when I sent you the memo, I also printed the budget report from G-Work. I messed up.
Yeah, I guess I'm
The resolution,
confused.
this 2025-120 is budget transfers. This has a transfer of TIF fund to debt service. That's not,
Oh, sorry, that's the wrong one.
Because 128 is
Did I mess up my
What?
resolution number? Hold on,
the public hearing for.
yeah.
but yeah,
126, resolution 2025-120.
Yeah.
Okay, so, oh, sorry. When I was referencing the transfers, that was from the previous session when we did approve the track loader. That's the one that I'm referencing in the memo. So this would have been like a budget transfer that we did that was just from Rut, transferring that, oh geez. What number is it? Hold on. Let's see if I have it on here. It would have been, we initially had it numbered, and it was preliminarily, like when we brought that track loader, it was initially going to be the rut fund, the water fund, and the storm sewer, when we thought that it was going to be 80,000. When the bids came in at the 66 or something like that, we decided that that we would not take it out of the utility funds, that because we had money in RUT, we would take 54,000 from RUT, and we would take the 7,400 from the equipment account that was closed at the bank to get to the total amount for the track loader. Those were simply transfers because we didn't initially have those in the capital line item. And I purchased out of the, it's called the capital vehicle expense account for a vehicle. I have to transfer those now into there, which I did that during the initial transfer, which would have been
what,
March.
not to interrupt you, but why are we talking about that? Because that's not even on here, right? It's not. even-
Well, that's why I said that this budget memo, I said it's kind of struck from here, but I didn't know if you guys still wanted me to talk
For
about
the
the memo.
TIF fund?
I don't even have that.
Yeah, I don't,
I don't have that budget memo on the desk. Maybe it's in the packet from the email out. It's in the pack.
I'm looking at what was in the blue for budget transfer number 4.
Oh, no. That's for later on the agenda. So this particular one, I was just referencing for the budget amendment, if you wanted me to go through this, even though we're not having the public hearing tonight. If you wanted me to go through that, I was just referencing when the council approved the previous budget transfer, which was done for the track loader. Sorry, not for the one that's in the packet for tonight. So the track loader, which I'll just grab it, it's just easier, sorry. Brian, is the door locked? Is this door locked? so for the budget amendment, this is not actually included in there, but when I reference why the need is for the budget amendment for the capital projects, because when we approved the track loader, so the memo that went with the track loader started in February, and the resolution for the track loader was approved. So the transfer, which would have been budget transfer number 3, was to take general fund dollars to the equipment purchases, which was $7,487 for the track loader. Then we did RUT 2 equipment purchases, which was a total of $54,661. To add those up, we get to the cost of what the track loader was. So I was simply referencing, those were the budget transfers that then I had to take the $66,000 then and move that into the capital account so that the purchase isn't made out of RUT. That way we can keep that track loader under capital equipment and not just in the RUT category. So to do that, the account that I moved it into is a capital account that's labeled capital account for vehicle purchases. To do that, it was not initially on the FY25 budget in April of 2024. So that column, after doing that and making the purchase for capital projects, now needs to say the 66,000. So it's already been paid for, it's already been transferred for the budget transfer. But because we did that, that then puts that capital account over the 66,000 because it wasn't in the initial budget as a capital purchase. Which then, if you go and look at our budget, our capital projects in the 300s would show over $66,000 because it wasn't in the initial budget. So when I was referencing a budget transfer, it's this one, not the one that's currently in your packet tonight. So I could have left it in RUT. However, I don't feel that we should do that since it is a capital piece of equipment. It should actually come out of capital equipment, which would then mean that we have to amend the budget under capital.
I mean, I understand that, I'm just not sure why we're talking about it right now. Because it's not, we're not considering anything on that tonight, so I think we should move on to the item B. I wasn't concerned about with any of that, somebody else was. We can address it when we pick it up at the next meeting, I think. Or when we consider the case for the public hearing.
Right, because everything that I just talked about goes actually with what was previously on the agenda that has been struck. But it's still a memo, so it's fine to share the memo since it's not taking action on that because none of the items within the budget amendment will change. It will simply be the fact that we have to change the date to set the hearing.
So your suggestion was tabled?
There's no topic.
Yeah, I don't think
There's
it
not.
really needs to be discussed.
Okay.
I was just confused because we started talking about budget memo and I don't have,
Is it
I
just a
have
discussion?
four.
Right,
Which
I
is like
apologize
B,
because
so
I
was
did,
like, what are we talking about?
Yes.
Yeah,
I apologize.
confused.
when that was being taken off the agenda, I took the packet for this one off of your table. So I'm sorry, I thought when we were talking, I thought it was that one.
Okay, move on to item C.
No, we have,
We have to do B.
yeah,
Okay,
Okay, so sorry, I was looking at the wrong one. So 2025. Yes, so this is just our this is a regular budget transfer. Now that the debt service has come in, we have one payment that goes toward the 2020B tax GO bond for principal and interest, for the $95,560. So we can simply transfer those dollars from TIF to pay that principal interest, which is annual.
Motion to approve 2025-120.
I second.
Been moved and second to approve resolution 2025-120. We'll vote. Councilperson Vasky.
Yes.
Councilperson Johnson.
Yes.
Councilperson Huber.
Yes.
Councilperson Bendel.
Yes.
Councilperson Holhouse.
Yes.
Item C, consider resolution 2025-123 to approve the updated credit card policy.
Okay, so we have actually amended this previous this year. This would simply be, taking, adding Ryan, the new deputy clerk, to the credit card, and taking off Joshua Baker, for the 2025-123 resolution.
Make a motion to approve 2025-123.
I'll second.
Been moved and second to approve resolution 2025-123. We'll vote. Councilperson Johnson.
Yes.
Councilperson Huber.
Yes.
Councilperson Bendel.
Yes.
Councilperson Vasky.
Yes.
Councilperson Holhouse.
Yes.
Item D, consider resolution 2025-124 to approve wage and benefit for fiscal year 26 for teachers local number 238.
Okay, so this is actually already in, what we previously did, during the reopener for the wage increase and the insurance contribution, and I'm trying to think, I believe that was in October. Do you remember, was that October we did those negotiations? So this is simply to, add the 3% wage increase, the 13% insurance contribution, which has actually already been approved, but this will be a resolution for the wage and benefit with the Exhibit A, which is the insert directly from the reopener of the contract for the Teamsters number 238.
13% employee insurance contribution per week. Is that the right term?
Well, yes,
Because they get paid weekly, so.
bi-weekly. We get paid bi-weekly, but the insurance accrues weekly.
A motion to approve resolution 2025-124.
Second.
Been moved and second to approve resolution 2025-124. We'll vote. Councilperson Huber.
Yes.
Councilperson Holhouse.
Yes.
Councilperson Johnson.
Yes.
Councilperson Vasky.
Yes.
And Councilperson Bendel.
Yes.
Item E. Water SRF.
If this is gonna be a little lengthy, if you don't mind, you can skip to setting the hearing for the resolution 2025-127, just because the water loan construction might take a little longer. I don't know if you guys wanna do that. If not, I can go into the construction loan.
And is anybody dependent on either one happening sooner than later? Because we're going to be here all night regardless. Unless he wants to bolt, is that?
That's your time restraints.
Having me decide now, is that better?
Yeah, I might,
It's probably-
Get home for supper then.
I'm okay staying in order.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
right.
Okay.
All right, so I do have a packet which I believe, thank you, John, I believe says discussion items. And it has a blue cover on it. And I'd like to go through the water rate memo and the accompanying documents that came from Maggie. So those were emailed to you Friday regarding the construction loan. I wanted to be able to put a memo with that so that we can I can go through this a little bit more in depth. We have 2 council members that haven't been here for the entire part, so I'd like to make sure that everyone fully understands the information that's been shared by Maggie. So if you're okay, I'll get started. Okay. So we're at the phase where the water storage tank as well as the pump house project have both been awarded. And the city is ready to move into the construction phase of the project, meaning that we need to move into the construction loan phase. So Maggie has provided a summary of information here. I think her words are actually that it's called a pro forma. I'm not really sure because I'm not super technical like that. But I just kind of want to run through. I did provide a timeline here on the front page 1 of the memo because I wanted it to be very clear where we are in the stages of the project. So as you know, this project started in January of 2023 with a water study and storage report, and the findings were adopted by the council, which shared the need that BNK did with that study about the need for the city of Urbana. From that, we moved in December to the intended use plan. And you can see here that, when we submitted the planning and design loan application, when we had our public hearings, I do want to point out, which is what I'm going to reference and discuss in this memo, which is going to be on April of 2024, was when Maggie was here and we held a public hearing, open forum, question answer that related totally to just public being able to answer and ask questions of how this project would impact the water rates in Urbana. And she came in and her initial with a project this size and with the rates not having been increased in the city of Urbana for water since 2008 and the sewer, I believe, was 2018. Initially, a project of this cost, her pro forma pages started at a $17 rate increase, which would be the flat capital fee, and that there would essentially need to be a 40% usage increase based on the current rate of where we were with our utility billing rates. So with that then, we moved into the next steps, and in July, we started the process of updating and amending the ordinance to the water rates, which would have been Chapter 92, and the ordinance was 921. Ordinance 921 essentially then was passed, and those rates took effect October of 2024. The capital fee was then added to all water bills for October of 2024, which is a $10 capital fee, and both tiers of usage increased by 20%. And you'll see on the charts that I have following what that exactly looked like for the city of Urbana. So with that then, kind of fast forward, you can see we had public hearings when we put it out for bid. Then we put the pump house out for bid again because we felt that we could save additional dollars by rebidding it and changing the structure of what was in the bid, which we did. And now we recently, in May last month, awarded the pump house improvements. And now here we sit with our construction loan and ready to execute. So basically, I put out there about the anticipation in April 2024 and Spear Financial coming to the meeting was to discuss the rate increases and the anticipation of what it would cost for this project. The city would be able to accumulate some additional cash with the $10 flat rate and the 20% usage increase, and any amount of money that we could collect before we went into this loan, obviously we're able to put then toward the loan, toward the project that we would not have to take out in the loan. The water rates had not been increased since fiscal year 2008, and sewer rates were not increased since fiscal year of 17. After 3 readings, we showed that the increase here in the chart, which shows the first 2,000 gallons, the rate was $19.17 for a minimum bill, and that went up 20%, which was $23. And 2001 and over was an additional, it went from $8 per 1,000 gallons to $9.60. And then, of course, we did not previously have a capital fee and added the $10 capital fee. I'd like to show you, if you look at the SRF funding source model, which is the first page of Maggie's packet, which is right behind. This just shows you on the right, the water project storage and booster and the overall cost, which is $7,209.48, which these came directly from the engineer. And again, Maggie said, if the city can come up with any utility fund balance or additional funds, which if you look, I confirmed that we could possibly come up with $400,000 in cash. That then, as I explained in here, could be a combination of the utility fund, which would be any increases from October flat rate fee, plus use partial lost, which the current balance in the lost is $354,000 and change. And then we have any additional funds from the money market, which that current balance was $426,000. If we decided to use a combination of any of those cash dollars that are available, we could decrease the loan amount to $3,607,209.48, which after the loan origination fee, we would be at the 3.625. If you're okay, I'm just gonna say 3.625 and not all the change. Maggie's suggestion is below, which is highlighted in yellow, and she suggests that since the city does have the ability with our debt capacity to take on loan that would not, because back up, I think it was made very clear to Maggie and I that our financial responsibility to meet the needs of the council and the citizens was that we wanted to see as less of an impact to the city's citizens in where we sat with $17 flat rate and 40% usage increase. I think that we were both made very well aware that we needed to do whatever we could to keep from sending that entire expense to the citizens of Urbana. So by demonstrating this, this is the solution that we feel is the suggestion to move forward with the construction loan. If the city took out a general obligation SRF for $1.25 million, those dollars would be paid back by the city with other means of cash. And then the water revenue, which a revenue loan, very similar to our sewer loan, the revenue SRF has to be paid by the revenue of that fund. So back when we did the sewer SRF, sewer rates had to increase because that portion of a loan can only be paid by the proceeds of the revenue that comes in for that utility. And you cannot cross over. So we can't say now, hey, we have extra money in the sewer, let's pay down the water SRF. You cannot do that. The city has to show that you can receipt up, is what you call that, to show that we have the revenue. So then that would put our revenue loan for the water SRF at $2.376 million. So that gets us to the $3.626 million. So then I just go into, if you look at then the page 2, which Maggie calls the water SRF, which looks basically like the loan maturity schedule. So it should be your second page, second page in your packet. And I'm sorry if I'm talking fast, so if you have questions, just interrupt me. Okay, so what this proposal says is that in July 1 of 2026, before the city can close on our water SRF construction loan, we have to show our bond counsel and our attorneys that we can receipt up for that revenue account for water. The only way to truly do that is in July 1 of 2026, we would increase the usage tiers 5%. Both tiers by 5%. Then annually, we would go back to what our current water rate ordinance says, chapter 92, which says that the city has the ability to annually review the utility rates in the city and increase those annually by 2.5% each year. Previously, that's where Maggie shared with us, we had not done that in the city of Urbana since fiscal year of 2008. So basically what she's saying is we would do a 5% annual. So this would be a total increase in usage of 25% total from October to July 1. Which, as you can see, is considerably less than the initial 40% that we thought that we needed to get to. Again, the city in our ordinance says 2.5%. What Maggie is showing here is 2% annually, meaning we don't have to go back and increase it the full 2.5%. We only have to show 2% to meet our 1.1 factor. So if you look on this page, the bright orange that says 110 factor is what she calls that. That's where when Maggie was here, that basically says that if you take out an SRF loan, your utility account for that loan has to be able to show that you can receipt up the expenses in that account by a 110 factor. So for our utility account with our water expenses, and then you can minus like capital expenses, you can minus a couple things. Ours is around 160,000. So we would have to be able to end the year with showing that we still had 160,000, which basically tells bond counsel that we have the money to pay that loan payment at the end of the year. So, are there any questions so far? I feel like I'm talking a mile a minute. So this is showing on this page that the city, which we'll get to, will have to show in July a first reading of an ordinance that basically says that the city will commit to July 1st of 2026, a 5% increase. And then annually thereafter, we need to, so that would be like fiscal year 27, we would have to commit to following what's currently in our ordinance, review and analyze those water rates at the 2% and annually increase 2% beginning in 2027. So if you look at my next chart, what that would look like, July 1 of 2026, the current minimum bill of $23 would increase to $24.15. And the second tier is for the usage for individuals or families that go over the 2001 gallons. That would go from the current $9.60 per 1,000 gallons, and it would take us to $10.08, and that would be a 5% increase. As you can see then, we would not change the capital fee. So we not only don't go to the $17, we're going to keep that capital fee at the $10. Questions so far? Does this sound familiar to the conversations? I'm specifically looking at the three of you because you were involved at the time in 2024, and then making sure that it's making sense, obviously, to Scott and Randy, because it's kind of a lot to throw at you to kind of pull this all together, which has been a year and a half in the works, actually a little longer than that.
Yeah, I mean, it does. The only thing that just came to mind was like the loss, using, planning the money out of the loss annually.
Yep, okay,
Is there
so,
rumblings of loss going away? Is that something?
You did hear that. That was proposed, that the legislation was proposing that they take away all of the dollars that cities are currently getting for lost and putting them into one pool within the state. There was a lot of pushback to that. It has not passed because it basically takes away the home rule for cities, which is to say, hey, we took lost to the ballot and our citizens in the city of Urbana voted specifically for where those dollars would go. If they were to do that and put it into a state fund, it basically nulls the intentions that every city in Iowa that takes the extra lost penny no longer takes into consideration why people went to the ballot to collect the dollars in the first place. Where ours says infrastructure. So that's where we kind of got in when we started doing the capital plan, and I'm gonna call you out on this, Jeff, because I do think it was your idea. You brought up to Maggie, hey, you know, if there's other dollars within the city, if the law is infrastructure, is there potential of using that to pay? And Maggie said, on an SRF loan, no. So the difference that we're saying there is why she has made the suggestion that the city take out the general obligation SRF, because you can use any of your allotted city dollars or cash to pay that portion of the SRF, but not the portion that says water revenue SRF, which would be where Maggie was initially saying no. If we took out just the water revenue loan and put all of that in a 3.26 water revenue, we cannot use lost. We could only use the dollars that would be generated in that water fund, which the only way to do that is a capital fee and increase the usage to the 17 and the 40%. I think the council made it very clear that we were not wanting to do that. So hence the reason why we're looking at taking two different loans, and the city of Urbana has the capacity within our borrowing to be able to do that, which then takes the burden to the 1.25 million to say, which when we did our capital planning, I'll go back to you, Jeff, when we did the capital planning, we specifically were not putting dollars and expending dollars in the capital other than the 43,000 that was typically used for chip seal. Because the idea was if we could finagle something and commit lost dollars to help pay on the water project and do something like that, then that could reduce the cost of what would be back on the citizens. So if you look at the capital plan that we created, the only lost dollars that were committed were for the chip seal and not for large projects such as sidewalk or a building or anything else like that, so that we could potentially use these fund balances that we do have toward knocking down this loan knocking down the expenses for the project so that we don't have to go into a higher loan, and then being able to, which goes into the third page. Sorry, not the third page. The third page is what takes it out to like 2042, which is the 20 years of the loan. So it'd be the last page that says the 1.25 general obligation at the top. And that's where you would see the project's not set to complete until 2026. So our loan payback is a partial, I believe it would be the interest would be paid here in 2025. And then the first loan payment in June of 2026, which would only be the $33,968, which we could pay with the lost dollars. Then if you move down to the following year, June of 2027, the principal interest could be paid with 87,000 of the lost dollars. Typically, the city generates approximately, I believe it's 145,000 per year in the lost dollars. So as you can see then, that would carry us out to that particular loan, which takes me into the final step, which would be page 3, which then goes into our utility where we've had conversations in the past that, okay, Maggie has always suggested to all of her clients, especially to us, that when we have a large project for water or sewer, that we use SRF funds and do that because the maturity of it is 20 years as a USDA loan that some cities would take out. It does lower the payment that you would make, however, it extends that loan out 40 years, which is a little ridiculous because by the length or the time on these projects is like 20 years for a water storage tank. So like 40 years later, you'd be still paying on 2 water storage tanks ago. So I wanted to be able to point this out because the city has made on the SRF, as you know, not only paid the SRF loan, but has taken everything that would have been an additional revenue at the end of the year that would have come in to take those dollars, and typically I believe it was $100,000, and taken that or a TIF, which is about $100,000, because it was written in the urban renewal that sewer project could be used for TIF dollars. So the city collected $100,000 and then used that $100,000 to pay off this SRF sooner. So this SRF should come due. I believe Maggie was out of town when I reached out to her to get a new debt, because as you remember, we paid an additional payment of $84,000 in December. And then as of the end of June 30th, we will have paid off the full loan payment for this fiscal year 25, which should put our balance around $518,421, if I calculated that correctly, which would put us at an estimated loan payoff around fiscal year 28. So obviously the same thing applies for the sewer, that if this particular loan is paid off in fiscal year 28, then we would be looking at, and that doesn't include if we decide to do another pay down. So it could be paid off essentially even earlier if we're in a position to make an additional payment. So if it is paid off earlier, the same thing would apply. The council should review the rates for the sewer, just like you review the rates for the water, and look to see if the city would then, at that time when the sewer loan is paid off, if we're in a position that we could reduce the rates on the sewer side, which, as you know, it kind of just becomes this balancing thing that Maggie explained to us last April, where it's like, yep, so you can reduce it here because now you have the water project, and then essentially you're going to pay on your water project and it's going to become due that you're probably going to have maintenance on the sewer side. So it just becomes a balancing act, but that's important to our taxpayers if they can even save a little bit of money. So I wanted to put in here that I would highly encourage then for us to pay very close attention to where we are with the fund balances, continue if we can to make that additional payment to then pay off the sewer loan hopefully before FY 28.
Makes sense to me, I think it's pretty
Do
clear.
you guys have additional questions? I'm specifically not meaning to put you on the spot, but I really want to make sure that fiscally, I want you guys to see and kind of bring you up to speed a little bit on where the project's been and why the council has been, put in the position to raise the rates and why we raise the rates. And then also that we've done quite a bit of work with Maggie to come back to not putting the entire burden back on the taxpayers, which was the goal, I believe, of the council, because we were all in shock of $17 flat rate and a 40% increase, because everybody in this room pays utilities, not just. So total, we would end with the $10 flat rate and a 25% increase over the course of this, and not the 40% increase, which I think is ideal.
Yeah, that's
Which would
definitely,
be my suggestion to the council.
that's a lot less shock to our people of the city.
Right,
'Cause, I mean,
and hopefully for the short term, because as we said, if it's only for a couple years, like the first payment in 26, 27, that first payment, within a year, we may be able to have the sewer paid off and look at that as well. So hopefully there could be some offset there.
So we look at the rate of that sheet right here, where it goes to 24.15 and 10.08. That's $1.53, right?
Can you tell me again, are you on the memo or are you on Maggie's sheet?
On the
Okay,
sheet, or sheet, or the color stuff.
so you're on page 2 of my memo?
Yeah.
Okay, where are you at?
So 24.15 and 10.08 would be the new rate, right?
Correct, so that would be the new rate, July 1 of 2026, but we have to put it in an ordinance before we close on the construction
My
loan.
question is, that's $1.53. Can that all just be added to the people that are using the 2001 and over and leave the minimum? And charge the people that are actually using it? What?
Not everybody hits over, I mean, I don't think that's a sure thing, right? You've gotta,
So you'd have to
Your
increase it
minimum.
more than 5%.
Right, your
Right,
minimum.
because we would have to then, yes, we would then have to take, what she's accounted for in her pro forma is those people also paying. So if we decided to defer that and we're
$1.50.
basically saying only increase the minimum usage, keep the minimum usage for the people that are minimum bill and then only add the increase, yes, but it would be more than the
Right.
5% then for
Right,
people.
you would add the $1.53 to that 10.08.
Right, well,
What does that revenue look like? Instead of raising it on the people that are minimum.
remember what she said, she's like, if you do that, people will use less to stay under.
And then
you
you'll
risk
be-
not having.
and then you risk not having any of the dollars in there.
And you got a person like me who lives by themselves, so I don't hit that number.
Yeah.
So I would not contribute.
Right, because that's where Maggie got into, well, unfortunately, what happens in situations where cities do that is you have people, oh, we're all going to cut back so that we can get on the lower usage side, which then, they can totally do that. But then it changes the numbers down here, which would be this bottom red line that Jeff's referring to. And I think when we also analyze this, we kind of all made the assumption in the beginning that maybe some of these commercial businesses were using more water and we should add more to the commercial business, and that was actually not the case. We had,
They were
Actually-
actually tier 1.
yes,
We had a.
the majority of those, all businesses, we had 8 accounts in the commercial that actually went over the 2001. All the other commercial businesses fell under the minimum bill.
But I seen where you're going with that. I mean, if we could do it, that'd be great, but.
I think we had a lot of data that showed where most households hit within those tiers, so it'd be good to look at that again.
Yep, I can show that. It was actually on that first memo that I did that replaced this. So I just looked at it. So I can actually get that first memo. And that would have been the one that we went through after Maggie was there. We discussed it in, she was here in April. I think we discussed it in May or June. And we analyzed all of those residential and commercial accounts. I put together a memo because I believe our first reading for the water was on July 1st. So I can definitely go back to that May, June memo of 2024. And when I send you the draft of the ordinance change that we'll have to look at here for July, where we would do a first reading of the change that says it will increase the 5% July 1 of 2026, I can include that in the email that I send to you guys. You guys can also then look at that initial analysis that was done then too.
I mean, regardless, we're catching up essentially, right? So that even with these changes, we're still, I don't even know if we would even be, if they had, councils had done.
From 2008 to
Yes.
2026.
Yes, we're probably
Yeah.
still maybe even under what we would have been if you did a 2%.
Right, and that's where, of course, Maggie cautioned me when I was going to still bring up, when we pay off the SRF. She says, make sure you pay very close attention to where those rates are and where that 2% would have fallen for the sewer over those years, so that you don't fall behind in sewer also.
I mean, if you did 2% over,
36%.
right, well, no, it's, yeah. If you did every 2 years, it would be, I was thinking 16%.
Yeah, I'm
So,
obviously not excited about raising rates, but I'm pleased that it's not what we initially thought we were going to have to do, because that was shell shocking and not ideal at all. And I do think we just need to be careful when we look at that sewer rate, because we're probably we're approaching time or length of life for that.
well,
We're gonna have to start thinking about
he mentioned
this
that
project
there's
is done, we're gonna be starting probably having to look at that project.
He just mentioned that there's some things that are gonna need to be replaced.
Yeah.
Equipment, but
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we need to like stash piling any funds or anything, but I just think we need to be looking
No,
at
but
that.
even if we looked at it and it worked out that 5%, you know, if we looked at like even 5% and what 5% could look like on the sewer side that we just increased on the water side, just to offset it. Again, I don't wanna speak to that right now because I obviously didn't bring those numbers with me, so I don't wanna put that out there and obviously commit to anything that I'm saying out loud, so.
no, I think it makes sense.
Okay, so then, Mayor, that would take us to F, which would be,
Consider resolution 2025-127 to set a date and time for public hearing on ordinance chapter 92 water rates.
I think I emailed that to you guys, so it would just simply, be, right? Is that in your packet or was it just in the email? I think
It was in there.
Yeah, so the 2025 would just be to, 2025, 127 would be to set a date for a public hearing for the water ordinance, which would be chapter 92, water rates.
Actually,
Right.
it's,
Are you in the one that I sent that was the
127.
the one had 126 in it, which was
Oh.
something different.
Should I
There was,
check it?
oh, I got
It's
it.
on my
I
desk.
got it. You sent it forward.
Okay. Is it 127 then, or is it 126?
It's 127.
127.
Okay, so that would be to set the date for a public hearing for July 9th at 6:30 for the first reading of chapter 92 water rates.
I'll motion to approve resolution 2025-127 to set a public hearing for, hearing on 92 water rates for July 9th at 6:30.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve resolution 2025-127. We'll vote. Councilperson Holthouse. Yes. Councilperson Vasky.
Yes.
Councilperson Huber.
Yes.
Councilperson Johnson.
Yes.
And Councilperson Bendel.
Yes.
Last item, police department discussion items.
So, there's been a couple questions asked, either by council members. I put together this memo, that I think we emailed out to you as we continue to explore and discuss the evaluation and options for law enforcement. I had a couple things that have come up recently, so, right now, I wanted to just ask council, we have a part-time building inspector now, and I do have a need for the office that is in here. The police chief office, there is also an office located in the police bay. What I'd like to do is simply have files moved out of this particular office so it can be used for the building inspector, so he has a place to come in and work as well. And it would simply be moving the items in the office that can be moved out there, to the
That's what
police
that
bay
was
office.
built for anyway,
Right.
so.
So that's basically just a question. I don't think there even needs to be a motion or anything, but just by looking at everybody, if we can use that office space, that would be what I would like to do with it.
I don't have any issues with that. I think that's a mayor and city administrator kind of call if you feel that's.
I mean, if that office is not, it's climate control.
Right. The police bay is probably climate control
It is.
also. However, there's a lot out in the police bay, so putting the building inspector in City Hall makes sense. It gives him an office, it gives him a space, and it's simply just moving 3 filing cabinets, I believe, out to, the police bay office.
And then that way, if he has questions, he can just get.
Yes. And he also works full-time, so his hours would be in City Hall probably after 4 o'clock. So I want him specifically to have a place that he can come into, that it has an office for him, so he can come in and have.
And it's got computers in there
Yeah.
too, so.
So if you guys are okay with that, the other thing that we do have, until we make some decisions, previously, we have left all services like on for vehicles. And specifically, we have, US Cellular holds, cell phones as well as Wi-Fi equipment, which is a hefty part of our portion of a bill. When the cars are not being utilized and obviously the cell phones for the police department are not being utilized, I don't see why we wouldn't just pause those services because there is not a need for them. The city has already paid for those for a year. I simply think that it's an expense that doesn't need to continue to accrue until decisions and discussions are made.
Yeah, see, there's 3 vehicles over there that Wi-Fi is connected to on them onboard computers. And it is quite expensive to keep that going every month when they're not being used.
And you could always keep the cell phones in this building, and you can tether them to the internet.
Right,
So they can
which,
stay updated.
yes. However, we have not done that either. We have, specifically are not touching cell phones. I would recommend that we actually use the cell phones because.
No, not to
Yeah.
use it, just so they can stay
Yes,
updated.
actually, so we can actually pause those and not use them and just deactivate those because, I mean, unless we were to reassign one of them to the building inspector, which is not a bad idea considering the building inspector is using his personal phone and, having to give out his personal cell phone number, which I wouldn't recommend, but I don't believe that we would use that phone. I think we need to go through deactivating those phones, considering circumstances that we just deactivate those and then we add the one cell phone for the building inspector. But like you said, on our bill, it's not just cell phones, the 2 cell phones, but there's Wi-Fi capabilities as well as software that are running in those vehicles as well.
We reached out to the provider to ask if they could just pause service. You know, so that we don't have to.
I tried to do
Yes.
that, and I'm not authorized yet, so I need to, we need to.
Melissa and I are the only authorized users on the account. And so I need to do that. And we believe, yes, that they can simply be deactivated with the equipment and then you can reactivate them just like you would a cell phone.
And it's costing over $200 a month just to have those. Like, I think the 3 hotspots are $65 a piece,
Wow.
and then there's 2 other phone lines on that as well. So.
Yeah, I think we should see about pausing it at least. If
Right.
we're not utilizing it, for any reason right now.
I also just wanted to bring you up to speed that, previously, before budget season, I had analyzed the 2023 annual data from Benton County. Also, nothing that's currently running, dictates where we get our data from. So the software that was being used there, how I get reports for the council, comes from Benton County as the same software. So if by deactivating that, it doesn't cut us off to any of our software data. So I reached out to Benton County to get the annual year data for the entire year of 2024. As you continue to have conversations, I think it's important that I, or if somebody else wants to do it, I will go through and analyze all of the 24 data, the annual 2024 data, which shows here in the memo, calls for service, call count by agency, calls per day per year, calls per hour per day, dispatched by activity by unit, which means how many, previously it was how many chief and reserves that we had, and this would be just by Benton County, and then a summary by hour. I did receive an email back from Kyle, I believe it was.
Kyle Lynch,
Deputy Kyle,
he's
yeah.
the captain.
And he's in the process of getting that annual data to me, so that as soon as I can get through that, I will share that.
When he does that, does he pull out things that Benton County would have already been doing previously, like specifically like, blanking on the word right now, but like subpoenas or like paperwork that the county actually serves? Because we wouldn't want that added into our time or calls for service. That's truly
Right.
not a call for service that Urbana would have done.
Right,
But
so.
when I've looked at the reports, that time when they're delivering those things, they're in those reports. So that's what, it's not, I just wanna call out, it's not
Yeah.
really apples to apples.
Right. So luckily, like the previous data from 2023 was all specific to
Yeah.
our department.
Yeah.
So yes, I can reach out because we can sort and pull this data, how we want it. So what I would do is just basically tell him like, we want this to be, which I did. I sent back
Does
to
he put it
him.
like in a pivot? Because what we get is like truly just a report. And you can't, like, there's no manipulation to that.
It's just raw data.
It's just, well, it's not even really raw data. It's put into like a formulated table that you can't, like,
A
sort by.
pivot table
Yeah,
basically.
we want a pivot table in Excel that we can actually look at the different categories, see what they are. We don't need the detail of the person or anything like that. We want the category and we want to be able to sort.
Well, they can show citations issued, they can show arrest made, accident investigation, whatever. This should all be on there.
Yeah, we want to get it as close to what we would have had from 23 to compare 23 and 24. And not have apples and oranges like what we're looking at right now.
I think that's a good one. On page 2 of the memo, I just, as things were coming in, I thought maybe I should put some of these expenses on here. You know, what an inactive Benton County for FY '26 is obviously increased because it doubled, and as you know, the entire county services doubled. So what that would look like previously, when we had only the 2.5 hours a week that were Benton County, what the annual dispatch fees look like if there's an active department, Benton County Sheriff Office for the liaison, property insurance currently, however, that will go up. I think I mentioned that to you guys during the budget session, that 14,700 liability goes up, and then I just put total expenses on a separate chart below so that you could just see the expenses, which are just the raw expenses, not our special revenue.
At some point, I mean, with the property insurance liability, I mean,
Will it go down? Is that what you're asking?
yeah, or move to a different department.
Well, right now, the property insurance liability is basically for everything in there. So if you take into account 3 vehicles, all the equipment that's in there, everything that's in there, as long as that all remains in there
It will
and we
stay the
keep it, it will continue, yeah. Plus, there's the umbrella type liability insurance, there's whether you have an active police department, there's the liability with that, which is not included in this 14.7.
I guess that's what my question is maybe is, so when you look at inactive versus active, why wouldn't the inactive be less than active on your?
On the insurance, because I think the only savings that we would have is if, right now, for the year, we kept the insurance, even to the insurance of if somebody were to get into each of those vehicles, so that vehicle insurance. So whether it's active or inactive for property insurance liability, doesn't matter unless we don't have some of the property that we previously had. Otherwise, whether we're active in our department or inactive, if we still hold all of our equipment and all of our expenses and that doesn't change, then our insurance liability won't change whether it's active or inactive.
So how much are we paying, so with the vehicles, what's the monthly insurance cost on vehicles, do we have that?
And I'm guessing they're not the same.
Probably not, well,
No, I actually had those separated. I can get that to you. I have it separated. Oh, does anybody have the spreadsheet, your budget binder? Is that your budget binder?
that was my.
No, that's okay. So do you have your budget binder? Actually, if this is in here, I shared with you guys the insurance liability, spreadsheet. $687 probably doesn't sound right, does it? Or does it?
For all 3 vehicles maybe?
For
For a month?
For a month,
no,
annually?
yeah,
That sounds
right.
too low.
no, okay,
No.
Sounds low.
okay.
I would say with
So-
3 vehicles, that's probably a quarter.
Sorry, my little chart's cutting off like what my header is.
Jesus, we're
So I'm like,
Insurance.
Oh, how about $5,451 for 3 vehicles, which it says commercial auto? Does that sound about right? Because I know I separated it out because it was separated out. Otherwise, I'm not committing to that number until I can go back to the policy and actually check that. But I think it's this column that says $5,451.
Can you, when you look at the policy, can you get it by vehicle?
Yes, and it is in the policy by vehicle, yes. So I added those up. So let me write that down. Okay.
You're like, wait.
Okay, so insurance, yes, I do have that, and I have it highlighted actually on the insurance policy. So by vehicle per year, correct? By vehicle per year, yes.
And
Yes,
then-
because the newer vehicle was much more expensive, I believe, than, the 2017 Ford Explorer and I think it's a 2020 F-150 truck.
Excluding the vehicles, what assets are in there that
Oh.
in the build, I mean, I would assume we have,
Guns, tasers,
but do we have?
computers.
Inventory that, or have carry a certain amount on that portion of the building because that's in there? Like, how does that work?
So it's my understanding, so when I came on in 2023, one of the things that I asked was for a capital improvement equipment inventory, which was not started, specifically for the police department. And I will have to ask the insurance agent. I think I recall him saying that it is right now a one amount for estimated for what likely I think is in the building. But I need to double check that because I don't know
The
that
only
for sure.
reason I ask is because of the conversation with the fire department where they recently just, estimated what the cost of
Yes.
this truck is. If we have something like that on that side of the building, do we have that high because of what's in there? Can we reduce that to save on the actual physical property liability for that building? Does it separate it? I mean, maybe it's not.
I
even
don't believe
separated.
it's itemized, so that's what I think I
Yeah.
need to check. Because you're basically saying, is there inventory or is there an estimate that was itemized for what was in there? So for example, if there's a fire, is it just a lump amount that the city would be, that we claim to have for the insurance? Because I do not believe it's itemized.
Okay, and if it's a lump amount, do we have that high because we've estimated? And is there a lower tier? If there's not, I mean, do we need that high of a tier?
Okay.
I just don't know what our.
No, I think I know what you're asking, and I will go back to that insurance. And actually, I'll probably share the whole thing, that whole piece that's shared with us when we do the,
I've just never
we did
seen the insurance, like how the policies are broke out for anything, but.
yes. So,
I mean, I think we should consider getting rid of at least one, if not two, police vehicles.
So previously on discussions, I shared during the budget sessions that the, need during the police department, based on the data that was provided, that, the amount of hours that were spent did not align with the data. So when we put together the new previous budget, it was for the police chief and then it was for reduced hours for reserves initially. This year then, for FY '26, it is just to cover the police salary and not have the additional expenses of all of the reserves. With that said, that was one of the requests was that whoever the police chief is, that a vehicle wouldn't be leaving town, which is a large expense for fuel and mileage, things like that. If something like that were the case, I mean, that would be totally a conversation that you would want to have. I do know prior that the fire department has said previously, a year ago, 2 years ago, that if the police department were to ever get rid of the 2020 truck, that the fire department would have a need for the truck, or that they would discuss the need for that truck. That's really the only
And if the fire department got it, the
Conversations
only thing
since
they
I've
have to
been
do
here.
is change details. It'd have-
Right, oh, right. If there's already sirens on it, you need whatever,
Sirens
and,
and lights and radios in it.
yeah, I don't know. So that's in terms of selling a vehicle, that's the only conversation that I've heard of an interest was with the Ford F-150 truck. And I think the Explorer is a 2017 Explorer, and then of course the Tahoe is a new Tahoe.
Well, I think it would be good to get the data on what we're spending on those vehicles as they sit. And then we can maybe make some assessments on what we feel is needed going forward. But I think having 3 vehicles is not necessary.
I can't imagine it's good for them to just submit.
No, I know that.
No, they need to be started and driven at least a little bit.
Well, I know the mayor was at least starting the vehicles through the winter,
I was.
and then we kind of found out
And then
that
I'd take
the
them out
equipment that was
the other
in
way
the
so
vehicle
people
was
wouldn't
actually
see me in
draining the
it.
battery, so it was always dead.
Yeah, the pickup, there's, they used to put a
Switch.
kill switch in them, but if they do, I don't know where they put it at anymore. Because there's something in there that draws the batteries down. Because
So I will
think,
definitely do that. I'll get additional data on the individual vehicles in terms of expenses.
probably the one with the most mileage on is Tahoe.
You know what, can you open the door quick for me? Does the registration have current mileage? Oh.
No.
What, I was just gonna say, what about the insurance
No.
doesn't either? Okay. I was gonna say, because we have those that are sitting there, I'm like, well, I could go check that, those little cards to see if
Oh,
there's
it
a
just
registration.
has the VIN number and
Oh.
stuff like that. So.
I mean,
So,
if the fire department's interested in pickup, we could always reach out to them and.
yeah, I haven't necessarily had any conversations with them. I just know that they have said previously that they could possibly be interested in that, in the need for another. And I don't know if that comes with what the need would be. I have no idea. We would have to reach out to them.
Yeah, I think the next steps is just getting the information. I was a little confused, and maybe I missed something when I was reading it, but the link that you gave on the sale of assets,
Yes,
I just see property, not,
correct.
okay. 'Cause
So the
previously
reason
we
why I
were-
put that on there is because if there were to be a sale of a vehicle, that we.
I meant real estate, down further, we've sold,
Yes, so the city can sell equipment and sell,
yeah,
property, not land property. So the land property has to go through the very specific government process, but the sale of assets that are equipment and vehicles does not. So we could go and say, hey, we wanna put, what was it that you guys, was it a dump truck? Before I got
We did
there,
a
that
dump
you would
truck.
put,
auction
Crown
off
the Crown Vic was done, right, I think when I got here, and the dump truck. Those are the two that I'm assuming they're put out on some Purple Wave auction bid or something. But yes, that's the reason why I put that link in there, is just so that you guys could go to that and know that if we were talking about equipment or vehicles, we didn't have to follow that, but when you sell land, you do, so they're very different.
Any more discussion?
Do we need to consider resolution 2025-128, set public
Oh, we
hearing?
do. Oh. I'll set a public hearing.
for the budget amendment. So I would motion to set a public hearing for June 24th at 6:30 to have a public hearing for the budget amendment.
Yes, and unfortunately, I think Randy, you were the only one that shared that you can't make maybe the 24th if you can't adjust the schedule.
I may not
maybe
be
you
able
can.
to, but
Okay.
I'll look into it.
Okay, so the only conflict for the June 24th was with Randy, so hopefully if he could make an adjustment in his schedule, if not, then it works for the majority.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, been moved and second to set a public hearing for resolution 2025-128, June 24th at 6:30. We'll vote. Councilperson Holhouse.
Yes.
Councilperson Huber.
Yes.
Councilperson Johnson.
Yes.
Councilperson Bendel.
Yes.
And Councilperson Vasky.
Yes.
Did I catch everybody? Now we can seek a motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
I second.
All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Oh.
8 o'clock?
Yeah.
It is.
This is time to phone again.
Oh, fun for you.
Oh, great, we have a storm coming?
Yeah, that's what I kept looking at his radar. I was like,
Oh.
Who was the Sasquatch